Dennis Young here, Primitive Substance. I'm your host. Season 4 already here, and actually Series 4, and a very special guest, J G Thirlwell, originally from Australia, musician, composer, alter egos, you name it. And thanks for coming on today.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So maybe start off by what kind of music you were listening to in Australia and what got you interested in being a composer, a musician?
What kind of music I was listening to? Let's see. Well, I grew up, from a young age, I listened to the radio, and the first band I ever saw was the Monkees in 1960.
Oh, I remember them very well.
In 1968, something like that. And
oh, man.
So I was pretty obsessed with music. That's one of my earliest memories is music. I started probably collecting records when I was about 11 or something like that. And in the early 70s, I was really, I really loved, I guess, glam rock. I was really into Bowie and Alice Cooper, Roxy Music, Sparks, things like that. And then,
oh yeah.
Concurrent to that, I really like prog rock as well. So
so did
really
I.
liked, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and King Crimson, and stuff like that. Growing up in Australia, I had this kind of cultural inferiority complex, about being, that maybe the local music was inferior. That the culture in Australia when I was a kid, it kind of drew equally from England and from the UK and from the USA. My mother is Scottish, and so it's when I was growing up, I spent a bunch of time in the UK. And so, that was really kind of, I didn't really listen to a lot of local music, you would say Australian music, probably until maybe the punk came along, and then there were groups like the Boys Next Door that I used to go and see all the time. And but then I left Australia soon after that. I left Australia in 1978, never to return, and I moved to London at that point.
Oh, okay. Lots going on there in 78, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a really magical time to be
movement.
there. Yeah, it was kind of after the punk movement. It was, punk rock was kind of something that swept me up into creating music. In that the message that I took from it was that you didn't have to be a virtuoso to play an instrument. And, so it democratized that process. And so I bought a bass guitar and taught myself by playing along with records. And I wasn't in a band in Australia, but as soon as I got to London, I bought a bass guitar. And soon after that, I bought a synthesizer and started making tapes in my room,
Oh, okay. Did you graduate to the 4-track tape machine? I know I had one, the old Tascam 244. It was a great little portable machine.
No, I didn't. I didn't set up my own sort of Porter studio thing. This was in 78, and I wasn't. If there was something around, I wasn't aware of it. But so I just used a cassette player and bounced back and forth between two cassette players. But my first experience in recording studios was I was pretty young. I was probably 19 or something, and working in little 8 tracks, and that was kind of where I, started playing with the studio as an instrument. That was, my first experiences with that.
So you were doing Foetus from 1981. You had your first single, right?
Yeah, pronounced Fetus.
Or FM?
It's pronounced Fetus. Yeah.
Fetus, okay.
It's the UK spelling. Fetus, Fetus, is spelled
Oh, okay.
FOET.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Apologize for that, but I
Yeah.
didn't know that. That's something. So you were doing a lot of
Fetus on both continents.
like under various names, right? For this, I mean, I see a lot of people on this.
What's that? So can you repeat the question? Or
You were working with a lot of you were working with a lot of musicians too. I see on this Raymond Watts, Mark Allman. So were you
Well,
actually playing
Fetus is actually
music
just
live?
me. Fetus
Okay.
is actually just me. And I was very strict up until 1995 that no one else played on any of the Fetus records. They're just me.
Okay.
Then about 1988, I put the first live band together where I did, reinterpretations of the studio stuff in a live format. That was the first time I did it as a band. Previous to that, I had done it live with backing. But yeah, I've done a lot of collaborations and, produced people and remixed people and, too numerous to, well, I don't know how detailed you want to go into that side of things.
In 1981, you started making records?
I started making records a little bit before that. I mean, Fetus. Before Fetus, I was briefly in a group called. The group was originally called Pragvec, and then they changed their name. They shed their rhythm section and changed the name to Spec Records, which was actually the name of their record label. And so that was. So I joined. In that group, I played synthesizers, and so that version of Spec Records was myself, Sue Gogan, the singer, and John Studholm, the guitarist, and Suresh Singh, who was a percussionist. And we kind of made an album, but the album had, various other things on it. It was a bit of a jumble, really, but that was that was the recordings we made there were in a 16-track, but concurrent to that, I had met Steve Stapleton, who had a project called Nurse with Wound. And I think maybe my first experiences in the recording studio were with him around that time. He was Nurse with Wound is a very experimental English group. I met him. I met him actually at this record store that I was working with working at it on Oxford Street, and we hit it off and started doing some recordings, a bunch of which came out. But it was working in the band format that made me realize I didn't want to work in a democratic way, and then that led me to create the Fetus project. And the first Fetus record I made at the end of 1980, I guess, and it came out on the 1st of January 1981, and it was a single under the name Fetus Underclass called OKFM, and then that was the start of a long line of Fetus records. For the first 10 years, I did records under many different versions of the name Fetus, Scraping Fetus Off the Wheel. You've got Fetus on Your Breath. I'll Need Review. Then after that, I just settled on Fetus, and it's just been Fetus for the last 30 years or so.
Now, how were you releasing these? Cassette? Was this? Were you putting these out on cassette? Were they 12-inch? What kind of format was it?
All on record.
Putting this music out.
All records. All. The first thing was a 7-inch. Then I formed my own label, Self-Immolation, and in the first 18 months, I released three 7-inches, 12-inch EP, and 2 albums. So I was pretty prolific. And then around about that time, I got involved with this label, Some Bizarre, and then they released some of the subsequent records.
Oh, neat. Now, is this music still available that the listeners could buy, or is this out of print?
Um, in the last few years I've re-released the first two albums, remastered, and those the second one is still in print on vinyl, which you can get through my website.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
first one sold out. I'm planning to do an anthology of the early singles at a later date. But I own the rights to a lot of my stuff, and
That's important.
some of it's available and some of it's not.
We know that, like from being in Liquid, to get our rights back, especially with White Lines, it was, that's important.
Yeah. You weren't with not were you with 99 Records?
Yeah, yes, we were. Yep,
Yeah,
we were. ESG, us, Glenn Branca,
right.
and then the whole thing collapsed after the whole White Lines.
That was Ed Ballman, wasn't
Happened.
it?
So
Was
it
that
was a short history of the label, but I think anything 80s. Yep, Ed Baum. In fact, I've done interviews with his brother,
he was
Bill
one of the first
Baum.
people I met in New York.
Bill was great. I mean, we're going to do another interview about that whole scene. We did 2 interviews about his early life, but I can't wait to talk to him again. But everything was really exciting back then, and that whole New York scene was.
So, but what White Lines, did they sample that, or did they replay that?
There was a lot of clubs. I guess they played it. They didn't sample. They sampled the music. That's what they did. So, but still, we're known for that because a lot of people still don't know us unless you're into a muso or into dance music. Probably like your stuff. It's very eclectic type of listener.
No, I do Liquid.
Oh, you did? Okay. We never got to Australia to play.
No,
we almost did, but it didn't happen.
I knew in the UK when I was in the UK.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we played reunion shows. We played some shows.
Yeah.
So
I was very into Branca,
Oh, he was great.
Yeah.
Glenn was, and then I interviewed Reese Chatham. You remember him?
Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah.
Reese did 4 hours of interviews about his whole life. What a fascinating guy.
Yeah.
And he played with us at Lincoln Center with, I believe, 200 guitars. That was one of our last shows, 2009. Then we had a few more after that.
I was there.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
That's great. That was exciting.
Yeah.
So then you had these talk more. You had these alter egos. What was that about? I looked up.
Well, when I first started doing Fetus, I decided I didn't want it to be a kind of a personality thing. I wanted it to have a bit more of a mystique about it, and I think that was partially the influence of the Residents, who had a big impact on me. I wanted to have a sort of a cloak of invisibility around it, and so I made up a bunch of different names of the kind of the band members in Fetus, and I came to realize that if I sent out a press release saying that this band is two statistics collectors and their pen pal from Athens, Georgia, and that will get printed. And so a whole bunch of these fanciful things that I made up got printed along with different band, member names and things like that. It became a bit difficult to sustain after a while. I sort of gave up. But by then I had established the name Clint Ruin as one of the members, that I did a bunch of stuff under the name Clint Ruin. Bubba Kowalski was another one. I did some production
stuff.
That
name.
Bubba Kowalski, Wade Banks, Aaron Fuchs, and then So that was just like within Fetus.
That's neat.
As I mentioned, there was a lot of different variations on the Fetus name, but then around about 1990, I felt like well, Fetus was increasingly becoming maybe 50% more, 50% instrumental, and I decided I wanted to.
Okay.
I didn't feel that aspect of it was really, recognized so much. So I wanted to spin off a project and create something that was all instrumental. And at that point, I started a project called Steroid Maximus, and that was all instrumental. And then that sort of changed things and opened up my musical universe a lot more, in that I could explore, different facets of what I wanted to do, and it gave me a chance to collaborate with some people, and probably dug me more into the kind of the soundtrack world.
Okay. And you were working with at one point what Mark Almond, Lydia Lunch, and Nick Cave. Is that that sounds pretty like a pretty nice project?
That was the project that brought me to New York. Actually, it was it was Halloween 1983. It was called The Immaculate Consumptive. And it was kind of an evening where all four of us did our own, a few songs each, and some collaborations. Like, Mark did a song where I played sax with him, and Lydia and I did a duet, and then there was a song where all four of us played together. And so we just did that 3 times, twice at Danceteria and once at the 930 Club in DC. Okay. And at that point, I'd been living in London for 5 years, and I came to New York, and I just loved it in New York, and I just stayed, and I've been here ever since.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we played at Danceteria and the 930 Club. Very nice places. Yeah. Danceteria was really happening back then. That was the go-to club, one of them.
It was
great bands, just a great vibe. It was just a great place. Yeah, and even the 930 Club was good too.
Oh yeah.
So, did you play at the Kitchen at all? Did you get a chance to play there?
No, I never played the Kitchen until like about 5 years ago, and I did a gala there. It was a gala for Nan Golden and Lydia Lunch, and I put together an ensemble for that.
Oh, very neat. And was that recorded at all? Did you record the shows?
No, that project hasn't been recorded. It's just called J G Thirlwell plus Ensemble. And I've done it. I've only done it I did it in New York maybe 3 times. And then I've done it in London. I did it in London last year. And then earlier this year, I did it at the Big Ears Festival in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Oh, that's really different. How was that experience in Tennessee?
Oh, that was great. Do you know Big Ears, the festival?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I heard that.
I did a with my ensemble. I did a solo set with my project called Silver Mantis, and then got to see a bunch of people play as well, which was really great. Been wanting to do that festival.
You're still doing music. That's really, really great to hear. Mm-hmm. And so, what anything more you want to go over, like, as far as what you're going to be doing in the future or current project? You want to talk about?
Well, what I'm working on right now, I'm finishing off several albums. I have a project called Xordox, which I've done 2 albums under that name, and I just finished a new Xordox album that will be coming out in the new year. It's being mastered at the moment, and I have another project. The last 20 years, I've been doing a lot of, along with my own stuff, I've been doing a lot of scoring for TV, and notably 2 animated shows, one of which is called The Venture Brothers, which was on Adult Swim, and another was called Archer, which was on FX. Soundtrack for Archer came out. Yeah, Soundtrack of Archer came out this year, and right now I'm finishing up the third volume of soundtracks for Venture Brothers, and that will come out next year as well.
Oh, okay.
And then for the past 7 years, I've been working on a new Fetus album, which I
Boy,
hope
you're very busy.
Yeah, I finally have that finished by the end of this year, and that will come out by the end of next year. And there'll be a lot of live shows around these three releases. And I have about another half dozen albums on the boil as well.
Holy shit. Now do you do a lot of this at a studio or your house, your home? Where do you record all this?
Yeah, I have a studio where I live, and I work in my studio every day. I do some recording and some mixing at other studios. Mainly, I track everything here, except for I don't do drums here. And then I've been doing a little bit of mixing for certain albums at some outside studios just to get another set of ears and another set of plugins on the music.
That helps. Now, are these all physical releases, or just say on Bandcamp or Spotify? How are you putting these out?
Those three will be on my label, and they're all coming out on vinyl, CD, and digital.
Oh, okay. And do you get good sales for these records? I mean, it's not cheap to put out vinyl these days, and got to have an audience.
Tens of millions.
Really? That is good.
No, not at all.
Tens of millions. I don't see them stacked up in back here, so that's a good thing. I don't see the record stacked. It's a joke.
Yeah, well, I have a very large space.
Okay, that's good. Well, at least you're still doing it. That's the main thing. You're active with music. That's what it's all about. Now, do you deal with Bandcamp at all? Do you use them at all?
Yeah, I use Bandcamp.
Have any luck with that? With
Bandcamp's great. Yeah.
Digital music? But I find it at times to be tough.
I've been doing e-commerce on my own website for like 25 years.
Okay.
But I also license stuff to other labels as well. It depends on the release. There's several labels that I've worked with. I've worked with many labels over the years.
Okay.
As I was saying, after starting my own label, as I said, I worked with this label, Some Bizarre, that went until about 1989. After that, in the 90s, I worked with a label called Big Cat for a while. They did the Steroid Maximus albums and some Fetus material. Then, in the post-Nirvana signing spree, I signed with Columbia, and I was on Columbia.
Wow.
I was on Columbia for one album.
Okay.
But that whole experience ended in tears, and then I was with several other labels after that. But around about 2000, about the year 2000, I started to think about reigniting my label again, to do some mail order only releases, and that was what spawned my project Manorexia. And Manorexia I did quite a lot through the arts, and Manorexia was another instrumental project. But it was a little bit more, one of the catalysts of Manorexia was I wanted to create music that was a bit more spacious and spatial. Contrast to Steroid Maximus and Fetus, where the music is very dense. And also I think that it wasn't the intention, but it skewed a bit more towards contemporary classical music, not really by design, but it just kind of did. It ended up that way. And that project, you know, I made one album under that name. It went well. And then I quickly made another one. And those albums caught the ear of some people within that contemporary classical world. And then that led to some of my first major commissions. First of which was with the first was with Kronos Quartet, and I wrote 3 string quartets for them.
Wow,
and then
that's impressive.
Subsequent to that, I did actually around about the same time I was commissioned by Bang on a Can to write a piece for the Bang on a Can All Stars.
Oh yeah, I know that. Right.
So then I around that time I also decided to create a live version of my Manorexia project as a chamber ensemble, and the instrumentation for that was string quartet, piano, percussion, and laptop. And so that I had 2 versions of. I had one based in New York and one based in London. And so when I had shows in Europe, I used the London musicians. Then in New York or in the States, I used the New York musicians. So I had 2 versions of the same ensemble.
Oh, okay.
I also had a kind of a spin-off version of it in Russia as well. The first Manorexia shows were actually in Moscow. They were in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And then I made a New York version of it, and then a London version of it. So I did that a lot in the 2000s and the early 2010s. And then subsequent to that, I've been writing for, you know, concurrent to that, I was doing a lot of the scoring for TV, and then you know, further commissions. So I've written a couple of things for chamber orchestra, and you know, and I continue to work in that world. I have a couple of chamber symphonies that have not come out yet, and I'm hoping to release in, you know, the next couple of years, things like that.
Well, you would have a big box set if you put all this together. You're very prolific. A lot of music you've done.
Yeah.
And you continue to be. That's really, really great. I mean, and now, do you use a lot of plugins on your computer for a lot of sounds, or you have synthesizers that you create some of this other music?
Yeah, I use Logic Pro as my DAW, as my digital audio workstation, and yeah, a lot of what I do is in the box. And you know, I use a lot of orchestral sound. So I have a lot of orchestral plugins, you know, instrument libraries, and so on. I have several synthesizers. When I'm scoring for you know, other instruments, I'll do it in Logic, and then, you know, maybe transfer it to another program that's a bit more elegant, like Sibelius, to create scores, because they look better in the program like that. So yeah, it really depends. I mean, you know, and then I play you know, I have live instruments as well, and you know, and I'll bring in musicians as needed, you know, especially, you know, probably brass instruments, and you know, and the last 5 years or so, I've been writing more for other singers as well. So I'm bringing in other singers as well.
Well, that's where you make the money, with if you're writing for singers and writing for people who are going to possibly be successful in this business. You know, that's hard these days. There's so much music out there. You know, you go on any digital sites, you have to weed through a lot of stuff. So, and what's your opinion of AI going forward with music? You think how's that gonna affect the whole music genre? Do you have any opinion on that? You're prolific scorer and writer?
I do. I think it could potentially decimate, the scoring industry. It depends on how ethical people are about using it. I'm not opposed. I'm not. The genie is out of the bottle. AI is already here. It's not, and it's moving so quickly that it's becoming very difficult to regulate. And
yes, that's true.
It's not particular, and the industries that are creating it aren't necessarily, that you can take their word for it.
That's true. That's true.
Responsibly or ethically. But then again, I'm also someone whose music has always been driven by technology and has moved with technology, and my music
I agree.
and my art has always reflected technology. So I'm not, I'm aware of the ethical concerns of AI. I do think that it can be used as another tool.
I agree.
I'm not opposed to using it. I don't use it in my music that I know of. But I think I use the tools.
But I think it'll make the young listener who's getting used to this, want to go back to listening to 80s, 90s, 70s, whatever music that was actually made and recorded and worked on. I think there's still going to be a vile interest in that going forward. Let's hope,
Well, I think that the internet has kind of made,
I don't know,
made it all, has such flattened time out in a lot of ways, where, all music is available at all times. I mean, when I was a kid, I would have to dig deep, and I had to be an archaeologist and discover things, and there was a lot of I used to get all the music papers from the UK when I was a kid, like New Musical Express and Melody Maker and stuff, and I would read about say David Bowie would mention Iggy Pop, or someone would mention Can or something like that, and then you'd get a Can record, and then because of Can you would just Amandul or something, and you'd follow the dots, and I'm still following the dots. Basically, I think that it's very, there's an avalanche of music out, and it's very hard to sift through without gatekeepers, and so people like yourself have to be the gatekeeper, because you're a sort of a media person. So it's your responsibility to introduce people to stuff. There are, a thing like Bandcamp is great for introducing people to new music, and for me, Bandcamp has been amazing for discovering music, and I discover music all the time, and I am voracious.
I agree. That's true.
Yeah, I'm voracious about wanting to hear new music, and I try and discover new stuff all of the time. And I publish a monthly playlist on my Tumblr blog. So people can see what I've been listening to and so on. But I think it's a really good time for music right now. It's very difficult to sift through, and I'm not talking about mainstream music, which I don't think is particularly good for mainstream music, but it's a great time for
I agree.
What we call the long tail. The long tail being everything that follows selling less and less copies until you get down to the dwindling.
That's true. I agree.
And in that long tail, there's incredible stuff going on, and it's just a matter of spending the time to find it and find what you're into and what your tribe is. And the things that I like and that I enjoy and what I listen to, it's not particularly popular.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, but that's where it goes. And then I remember as a kid, I used to be able to get a lot of what they call cutouts. So there was a record
Yeah.
store by my house, and for $1.99, I was picking up Von der Graaf Generator, David Allen, Can,
Yeah.
and and trying to absorb all this is really something.
Yeah.
But anyway, so please please send me back a description of where we could find all your music, even some of your links to your Bandcamp links, anything you have, because I want the listener to find artists like yourself. That's the reason I'm doing this whole series of interviews. I really want to find creative people like yourself, Reese, and everybody else that I've been interviewing, so people can find you. Especially the ones that don't know about you. I mean, you have a select, I'm sure, audience of people that know your music, but I want to have the other listener who happens to find this or say, oh, well, by the way, I never heard of this gentleman, and maybe become a fan. So I want to thank you for coming on, and good luck with the future. I know you're extremely busy, you're prolific, and thanks again for doing this. And I'll have this up soon, and send me back some of the descriptions that you want me to put up, and we'll take it from there. All right.
Great.
Thanks
Dennis.
a lot. Okay. Have a great day. See ya. Bye-bye.